One actress from the 1940s loved doing cartwheels without underwear. A leading man once hid a dead snake in his co-star's costume. Shocking, right? Classic Hollywood, 1910s to 1960s, wasn't all glamour. Some stars were wild behind the scenes. Which famous actors swore like sailors, pulled crazy pranks, or acted totally inappropriate? Stay tuned to find out. 1. Clara Bo. Clara Bo was Hollywood's original it girl of the silent era, known for her big eyes and flapper style. But off-camera, Clara was as wild as they come. Other celebrities in the 1920s thought she was vulgar and bad-mannered, and high society types snubbed her for her behavior. Why? Clara grew up poor and never pretended to be a fancy lady. She gambled with crew members, roller-skated through Beverly Hills, and used unladylike language whenever she felt like it. Her studio, Paramount, wrung its hands over her public love affairs and partying. But Clara didn't care one bit. As she later wrote, "The so-called social elite of Hollywood snubbed me. And you know what? I didn't give a hoot." Fans loved Clara's authentic, fun-loving spirit. She got away with her vulgar side because she owned it and remained the down-to-earth star people adored, even as Hollywood gasped at her antics. Second, Mae West. Mae West was a blonde bombshell famous for sassy, grown-up jokes and double entendres on screen. In the 1930s, she shocked censors with lines like, "Is that a pistol in your pocket? Or are you just happy to see me?" Mae's mouth was so risque that she was actually arrested in 1927 for a Broadway play she wrote called Sex. A jury declared it obscene, and she spent over a week in jail for it. Instead of ruining her, that scandal made Mae's career. She later joked, "I believe in censorship. I made a fortune out of it." On film, Mae got the last laugh by writing many of her own witty lines, cleverly sneaking naughty jokes past the Hays Code censors. Off-screen, she was just as bold. In fact, her risque wisecracks got her banned from radio for many years. But Mae's fans loved her brazen charm. She was never mean or crude for cruelty's sake. She was funny. Studios protected her image because audiences flocked to see this bad girl who made being vulgar into an art form. Mae West proved that a sharp tongue and a cheeky wink could break all the rules and still leave 'em laughing. 3. Tallula Bankhead. Tallula Bankhead was notorious in old Hollywood for her wild behavior and foul mouth. This Alabama-born actress lit up Broadway and film with her talent, and shocked everyone with her off-stage antics. How wild was Tallula? For one, she smoked 100 cigarettes a day and drank straight bourbon like water, earning her a hard-partying reputation. She was famously loud and crude. Tallula loved to tell dirty jokes and use swear words that proper ladies never uttered back then. In fact, writer Norman Mailer recalled she once greeted him by purring, "Oh, hello, you're the young man that doesn't know how to spell F," using the F word. She didn't even censor herself for famous writers. Tallula was also an outrageous prankster. She reportedly did cartwheels with no underwear on, flashing everyone just for a laugh. On the set of Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, 1944, she refused to wear undergarments under her costume. When a crew member complained, Tallula quipped that she'd wear underwear if someone gave her a pair. Otherwise, oh well, she truly didn't care what anyone thought. Despite her vulgar ways, or perhaps because of them, Tallula was protected by studios and adored by a segment of fans who found her outrageous personality entertaining. She got away with it because she was always herself. As she famously said, "I'm as pure as the driven slush." In other words, delightfully dirty. 4. W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields was a classic Hollywood comedian known for his top hat, whiskey bottle, and wicked one-liners. On screen, he played a funny grump, but in real life, he was even more vulgar. Fields hated anyone telling him not to drink or swear. He was famous for quips about disliking children and babies. For example, he joked, "Anyone who hates children and dogs can't be all bad." Yikes! He'd say shocking things in jest, like claiming he liked kids only if you parboil them first. A super dark joke that made people gasp and laugh nervously. Fields also swore constantly in that distinctive drawl of his. He couldn't get through a day without calling someone an unprintable name. One legendary on-set story shows just how much he loved his booze and salty language. Fields would bring a thermos filled with gin to movie sets, calling it pineapple juice to fool the producers. Tired of his drinking, a prop boy once secretly dumped out the gin and refilled the thermos with real fruit juice. When Fields took a big swig and realized there was no alcohol, he spat it out in horror and yelled, "Some bastard put pineapple juice in my pineapple juice." In that one hilarious outburst, he managed to both lie and swear in the same sentence. Despite this rude behavior, audiences loved W.C. Fields' curmudgeonly charm. His vulgar nature was forgiven as part of his comedic persona. The studios tolerated his cussing and boozing because, frankly, he delivered the laughs. And a little bad language was a small price to pay for comedy gold. Cinquième Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, the star of The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, seemed every inch the charming hero on screen. But off-screen, Flynn was infamous for his wild, vulgar escapades. In fact, the phrase "in like Flynn" was coined to hint at how easily he could get into trouble, especially with women. His antics were the stuff of legend. Flynn loved partying on his yacht with plenty of booze and babes, behavior very scandalous for the 1930s. He also had a twisted sense of humor. For example, while filming a movie with actress Olivia de Havilland, Errol decided to play a horrid prank. He hid a dead snake in her underwear as a joke. When Olivia went to get dressed, she found the snake and screamed. She knew very well who was responsible, Errol later bragged. Unsurprisingly, Flynn's co-stars were not amused by these pranks. Actress Bette Davis once became so angry with him that during a scene where she had to slap him, she hauled off and punched him for real. Flynn could also swear up a storm, especially when he'd had a few drinks. He flouted all the rules with a grin and a raise of his eyebrow. How did Errol Flynn get away with such vulgar behavior? Well, he was incredibly popular. Audiences loved his devil-may-care charisma. Warner Brothers studios often covered up Flynn's worst scandals to keep his clean image, but people in the industry knew the truth. Behind the dashing hero was a real bad boy. And somehow, that only added to the legend of Errol Flynn. 6. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was one of Hollywood's greatest actresses, and one of its feistiest personalities. She wasn't conventionally vulgar in public, but boy, could she deliver a scathing insult like nobody else. Bette's longtime feud with actress Joan Crawford produced some of the meanest and funniest lines in movie history. For instance, Bette once quipped about Joan, "She has slept with every male star at MGM except Lassie." Lassie, of course, was a dog. So this was a huge burn implying Joan had been with literally everyone human. Another time, when Joan Crawford died, Bette said, "You should never say bad things about the dead. Only good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good." Absolutely brutal. Davis was also known to use salty language on set. She stood up to directors and executives with zero fear, and if that required a curse word, so be it. Once, a director tried to get Bette to tone down her performance. She allegedly barked, "Hell no!" and did it her way. She also chain-smoked and drank coffee heavily, growling out witty profanities between takes. Yet, fans adored Bette Davis for her strong, no-nonsense attitude. Her vulgar quips became legendary Hollywood gossip. In an era when many actresses played nice, Bette's biting honesty set her apart. The studios tolerated her difficult behavior because she was such a talent, and frankly, her bold barbs made people love her more. To this day, her spicy quotes, like the lassie zinger above, keep her reputation as the queen of the sharpened tongue alive. Yadinchi Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner was one of the most beautiful stars of the 1940s and 50s, and also one of the raunchiest talkers in Tinseltown. This southern farm girl turned silver screen legend did not have a prim vocabulary. In fact, one reporter marveled that Ava's swearing was like a sailor and a truck driver were having a competition. She could curse up a storm, loud and proud. During one interview, Ava got so annoyed at a nosy journalist that she threw a glass of champagne at him, then cursed him out with colorful language while he sat soaked. He admitted all he could think was how gorgeous she looked doing it. Ava's behind-the-scenes escapades were equally wild. She loved late-night parties and could drink many of her male co-stars under the table. Co-workers joked that Ava danced all night, swore at dawn, and never apologized for any of it. On the set of Mogambo, 1953, in Africa, she would show up hungover, but still outact everyone, then casually drop an F-bomb if something went wrong. And yet, Ava's star power never dimmed. Fans and studio execs alike forgave her foul mouth because she was the definition of a star. MGM even promoted her as the world's most beautiful animal, emphasizing her untamed spirit. Unlike many actresses who hid their rough edges, Ava let hers gleam. The public found her honesty refreshing. When told she should behave, she reportedly replied, "Honey, I'm just a plain meat and potatoes girl, with garlic." In other words, glamorous on the outside, spicy on the inside, and Hollywood wouldn't have had her any other way. 8. Jane. 8. Mansfield. Jane Mansfield was a 1950s blonde sex symbol famous for her extreme hourglass figure and playful publicity stunts. But even in an era of rising bombshells, Jane stood out as especially outrageous and vulgar by nature. She loved shocking people by showing more skin than anyone. The most infamous example was a 1957 Hollywood dinner party honoring actress Sophia Loren. Jane arrived in a dangerously low-cut gown that barely contained her ample bust. She immediately sat next to Sophia, leaning over so far that it looked like a wardrobe malfunction was seconds away. Sophia Loren later described the scene, "I'm staring at her chest because I am afraid they are about to come onto my plate. I'm so frightened that everything in her dress is going to blow, boom, and spill all over the table." A photographer snapped the iconic shot of Sophia, giving Jane the ultimate side-eye. Jane, however, was delighted. The stunt landed her photo in papers worldwide. This was typical Mansfield. She would crack dirty jokes, pose nude for PR with strategically placed props, and even once straddled a piano during a press event, kicking her legs up and causing headlines. Many considered her behavior vulgar and cheap, but Jane knew exactly what she was doing. The attention kept her famous. Studios tolerated her risque antics because she generated free publicity. Fans, especially young men, thought her over-the-top sexuality was fun and daring. Jane Mansfield basically turned vulgar spectacle into a career. She didn't have the long-lasting film roles like some peers, but in the 1950s, No Hollywood list of wild ones was complete without Jane and her jaw-dropping tricks. She proved that sometimes any publicity, even a near boom at a formal dinner, is good publicity. 9. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum had a laconic tough guy persona on screen, and in real life, he truly did not care what anyone thought. This made him one of Hollywood's first genuine bad boys, complete with vulgar habits. Mitchum openly smoked marijuana in the 1940s, a huge no-no back then. In 1948, he was arrested for drug possession at a wild party and thrown in jail. But Mitchum met the scandal with a smirk. When police asked his occupation, he coolly replied, "Former actor," assuming his career was over. While serving 43 days on a prison farm, he shocked reporters by grinning in his mugshots and joking, "I like jail. It's like Palm Springs, but without all the riffraff." Yes, he compared jail to a spa vacation while most would be ashamed. That insouciant, vulgar wit made the public oddly love him more. After release, Mitchum continued to rebel. He'd show up to film noir sets late, sometimes hungover, and curse out any fool who annoyed him. Once, on John Wayne's movie Blood Alley, Mitchum got into a brawl with a crew member after too many drinks and allegedly threw the man into a river. He was fired for that incident, but no hard feelings. He kept working elsewhere. Mitchum was famous for saying acting was just a job, and he'd rather be relaxing. His favorite word seemed to be a dismissive hell, followed by something rude. Yet Hollywood couldn't quit him, and audiences kept buying tickets. Why? Because Mitchum's devil-may-care attitude and subtle acting made him magnetic. His vulgar streak just proved he was real. In an age of studio-manufactured gentlemen, Robert Mitchum's rough edges set him apart as the genuine article. A bad boy you couldn't help but root for. Gishanti Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando rewrote the rules of acting with On the Waterfront and a streetcar named Desire. He also rewrote the rules of behind-the-scenes behavior by being shockingly irreverent and vulgar. Brando in the 50s was a young rebel who thumbed his nose at Hollywood decorum. He often showed up to rehearsals in a t-shirt and jeans, unheard of then, and would curse freely if he disliked the script or the director's orders. Co-workers recall Brando using the F-word like punctuation in private conversations. But one of Marlon's funniest vulgar quirks was his obsession with flatulence jokes. Yes, arguably, the greatest actor of his generation loved fart gags. Brando kept a high-tech whoopee cushion device and would hide it on set to prank people. During serious scenes, he might discreetly trigger a loud fart noise, leaving cast and crew either chuckling or baffled. He did this even in later years, tormenting actor Robert De Niro with whoopee cushion pranks on a 2001 film. Back in the 50s and 60s, he'd also lighten the mood by burping loudly or making obscene jokes. In one instance, filming a love scene, Brando deliberately ate a ton of garlic beforehand and then belched, declaring, "How's that for passion?" The crew couldn't stop laughing. The leading lady, not so much. Brando also wasn't shy about mooning, showing his bare backside, as a prank. For example, on Mutiny on the Bounty, 1962, he supposedly mooned a fellow actor who was irritating him. So how did Brando get away with such juvenile, vulgar antics? Well, by being Marlon Brando. His talent was untouchable. Directors tolerated more from him because when the camera rolled, he was pure magic. Also, many found his goofy, down-to-earth mischief kind of endearing. It proved that underneath the brooding genius was a regular guy who loved a good fart joke. In an era that often took itself too seriously, Brando's mix of high art and low humor made him a fascinating, if naughty, legend. 11th Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor was the definition of Hollywood glamour. Violet-eyed, impeccably dressed, a two-time Oscar winner. But Lady Liz also had a mouth on her that could make a sailor blush. Unlike many prim starlets, Elizabeth proudly admitted, "I'm loud and I'm vulgar, and I wear the pants in the house." She could drink, belch, and swear with the best of them. While filming Cleopatra, or Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, she was known to drop casual profanities if something annoyed her. Nothing vicious, just surprisingly coarse coming from such a glamorous person. Crew members were often shocked to hear this elegant beauty yell out, "Damn it," or even stronger words when a light blew or a costume ripped. Elizabeth also had a playful, crass side. She'd crack dirty jokes with the makeup artists and wasn't above a bit of potty humor herself. Co-star Rock Hudson once noted that Liz could tell a bawdy joke that'd curl your toes while touching up her lipstick. Part of this came from spending so much time with her rowdy husbands, like Richard Burton. Together, they were infamous for late nights full of champagne and swearing contests. In fact, friends said Elizabeth could out-curse Burton after a few martinis. Yet, far from losing fans, this earthy side made people love her more. She never acted too good for anyone. On set, she treated the crew like equals, and if that meant tossing around a few four-letter words in friendly banter, so be it. Elizabeth felt it kept her real and grounded. And she was right. The public saw that, beneath the tiaras and designer gowns, Elizabeth Taylor was a human being who wasn't afraid to be a little vulgar and have a laugh at herself. That just made her seem more genuine. Thus, the most glamorous woman in the world got away with burping and cussing because she was authentic about it, and fans will always forgive a star who's real. 12th. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's voice was smooth as silk, but his language? Often rough as sandpaper. Sinatra had a legendary temper and a vocabulary full of curse words, especially after a few Jack Daniels on the rocks. By the early 1960s, he was as famous for his explosive swearing as for his singing. His one-time fiancée, dancer Juliette Prowse, delicately noted, "Frank was a complex person, and after a few drinks, he could be very difficult." Translation: get some booze in Sinatra, and look out. One infamous incident in 1962 illustrates this. Dean Martin was in a recording session with an orchestra when Sinatra barged in unannounced, flanked by bodyguards and already tipsy. He shoved aside the conductor and took over, then proceeded to curse out the entire room. He insulted the choir's singing, using an ugly slur for Italians, and peppered every single sentence with the F word. Musicians and technicians stood there stunned as Sinatra dropped F-bombs left and right, not caring who heard. When the studio clock hit midnight, the union musicians insisted on their contractually required break. This enraged Sinatra further. He swore even more, cussing about the foxing break and glaring at everyone. Witnesses say even his date that night, actress Juliette Prowse, wasn't safe from his tongue-lashing. He allegedly called her a few choice names in the chaos. This was classic Frank. If something didn't go his way, out came the profanity and insults in a torrent. He once even punched a reporter, yelling, "Expletive you!" when angered by an intrusive question. Sinatra's public image was the suave chairman of the board, but privately, he could make a truck driver blush. So why was it tolerated? Two reasons: power and talent. By the 50s and 60s, Sinatra was so influential, with friends in high places, that few dared challenge him. And his talent was undeniable. Fans and studios alike were willing to overlook his foul-mouthed tirades, because when he sang "My Way," he really did it his way. Plus, some folks found his fiery attitude exciting. It gave him a dangerous edge. Frank Sinatra cursed a blue streak and lived life full throttle, and in doing so became a legend that no one could clean up or censor. Each of these 12 Golden Age stars proves that behind the scenes, Hollywood's idols weren't saints at all. They were real people with very vulgar habits and hilarious, wild stories that still shock and entertain us today.